lot of people. And I know that's going to be misconstrued, especially if you just take that little soundbite and you just run with it. But within the context of everything that I've said, and within the context of everything that Nietzsche says, for those of you that get it, you should want to be immoral as well. It's the worst thing I could possibly probably say, right? But it's true. According to Nietzsche, and it totally makes sense. And I'm not going to sort of make sense of that because I've done it tons and tons of times again with respect to progress, right? The recognition that immorality comes as, it manifests as a consequence of nature's ability to inform the higher, and the highest, if you will, sort of sphere of intelligence it's just pretty powerful stuff. It's super technical, it's jargon filled, it's conceptually difficult, but if you've read Nietzsche and you've gone through the notes a couple of times and you've read through the book a couple of times and you do this a couple of times, the images get stuck in your head and you recognize, nah, that's what I need to be, dude. I need to be more immoral. Right? Because insofar as I'm more immoral, it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. I'm an ethical person. Right? But I'm ethical independent to ethics. I'm ethical independent to morality. And that's what's the beauty of Nietzsche. We're getting near the end of book 1, right? So I gotta end on a hardcore note, dude. That's the beauty of Nietzsche, right? You can preserve your ethical behavior independent to ethics. You can preserve an ethical outlook on life independent to a system of morality and a value system informed by some deontological claims of what I have to and ought to do, right? That's the whole point, right? By returning to what's natural, right? And for me, that's just insane. So I wanted to look at this almost last section, reinterpreting the natural, because I think for me this is going to be very, very, very important. So the first point, reinterpreting the natural. Number 1, not return to nature, right? We are not talking about a return necessarily to nature. For there has never been a natural humanity. This is in note 120, right? Not a return to nature, because it's never been a natural humanity. And the question is, what exactly does it mean? Now, granted, you would need years of experience in philosophy, I think, to make sense of this. Even the most advanced graduate students might not catch this, right? But, I mean, my BA, my MA, my PhD, all of my education is philosophy. So you got to practice this a little bit to get it, right? So I'll read it and then I'll explain it. Not a return to nature, right? It's not a return to nature because for Nietzsche, he says, quote, and this is a direct quote, there has never been a natural humanity. What is, in order to make sense of that, there has never been a natural humanity? What, I mean, human beings are natural, there's never been a natural humanity? Remember, the juxtaposition, the polemical relationship between nature as one pole and morality as the other. If you think of, prior to Nietzsche, Kant, right? So you have Kantian deontology, right? If you think of Mill's virtue ethics, if you think of not virtue ethics, you think of Mill's utilitarianism. If you think of Aristotle's virtue ethics, right? And now we're in antiquity, right? You've always had, or even before, if you want to go to like, Hesiod type stuff, there's always been, and his discourse on Kleos, and I did my master's in antiquity, right? Kleos was sort of the virtue ethics of its time, the ethic of his time. Kleos being glory. In one of my novels, I named the lead character, who's a woman, Cleomenes, right? The glory of motherhood, the glory of the woman, right? So it's like, glory, even before Aristotle, we still had a time in which there was a sense of virtue, there was an imperative. It wasn't systematized like it was in Aristotle or Mill or Kant or whoever, but there was always a time in which, since the beginning of sort of documented human writing, that there were moral imperatives. So for Nietzsche, it's not a return to the natural, because there's never been a place where the natural being the negation of that moral imperative. From the very beginning, there's been moral imperative from day one. From day one, from human beings crawled up out the ocean, it was moral imperative. Don't kill the other guy, right? Stay away from me. Kinship towards our own, There's whatever you want to say your imperative is. We've always had these imperatives. We still have them today, and we're going to have them until we die, right? What Nietzsche's saying is that we have to recognize that it wasn't a return to it because we are trying to discover. In a sense, it's a discovery of the natural, which is really beautiful. Not, quote, return to nature. For there has never been a natural humanity. And I explain at least what I think that means. And if you think I'm wrong, cool, tell me a different interpretation, or what you think another interpretation might be. This is the whole point of my YouTube channel, is for me to get new ways of interpreting it, because I'm sure this won't be the last time I read this book again anyway. So, not a return to nature, for there has never been a natural humanity. The scholasticism of and anti-natural values is the rule, right? And we know what that means, right? The institution has always set itself in opposition to natural values, right? To nature, to embracing the world of existence. Man reaches nature only after a long struggle. He never returns, right? He only reaches it after a struggle. This is great. Nature, that is, daring to be immoral like nature. So that's the point, right? We need to dare to be immoral like nature. It's not a return to nature as it is. What's the word that he uses? It's not a return to nature. He never returns, man reaches. It's not returning to nature. It's reaching, approaching. It's sort of like this asymptotic, approach but never really reach, I guess. Because I don't know if he would say, because he doesn't want to posit nature as like the new imperative, right? Because we talked about how that can become, one viewer was talking about in a contemporary sense, sort of like atheistic ecology on crack, like how you can be really, really green, you can be too green to where you're militantly green, right? So it's not a return, but a reaching nature. Right? We're not returning to nature because we've never been there, according to Nietzsche, and if my interpretation is correct, I know what that means and that makes sense. Right? We've never been the natural, per se. I guess, well, I don't know. And that's why I think that my interpretation might be skewed a bit, and I'm open, because, there were really, really pagan societies, really, really pagan sort of European societies, really, really pagan African societies. There are pagan societies, and insofar as they're pagan societies, I would view them as natural, but there might be a sense in which my interpretation needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. So again, if you have a good way of interpreting that first bit in note 120, not return to nature, for there has never been a natural humanity. If you can, I told you what I think that means. If you have a different idea of what you think that means, please, comment, share, enlighten. Okay, so not a return, but a reaching. Okay, so that's the first thing. Next point, 120. We consider all being great at a placing oneself outside as far as morality is concerned. So a thing is great if we have, basically this is what this means. Here is morality, right? And if we deny that, right? If we place ourselves in opposition to, outside of, right? I'm not inside there, where everything else would be sort of like internalized within morality, right? Being outside of morality, and probably just a different arrow, right? This is what we want, this is what we don't want. We consider all being great as a placing oneself outside as far as morality is concerned. I place myself outside of morality, right? I become immoral. I am an immoralist. We the immoralists, he says, right? I become an immoralist, and insofar as I become an immoralist, I transcend distinctions of goodness and badness, right? I'm no longer held to the subservience and dominance and domineering conditions and constraints of morality, right? I'm beyond morality. Now, granted, what I'm doing in the way that I act in the world has repercussions, right? The things that I do, if they're interpreted as being very dangerous and bad, others will feel a sense of obligation to protect others from me, and so on and so forth, right? So it's not like there aren't any repercussions. It's not anarchism. It's not everything goes, right? That's a total misunderstanding of what he's saying. What he's saying has nothing to do with that. It's beyond that. It's beyond the political. It's way beyond the political, right? This is more of a cosmology, if you will. Metaphysics, maybe.